Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and those of you still on the fence figuring things out, we are back with another derailed courtesy of Arcaicskidz. I am Arcaicskidz, and we have with us the very elusive Kevin Hobbie. Kevin, what's up, man?
What's up, man? I've just been doing the Carmen Sandiego thing for a while, you know?
Nice. Why don't you tell everyone? I'm sure they know who you are, but why don't you tell everyone who you are, what you're about?
So my name's Kevin Hobbie. I am the current chair of the OKLP. That's the Oklahoma Libertarian Party. I was the former vice chair, podcaster, of course, because every libertarian has a podcast, you know.
You must.
I know it's like a requirement. I think they're going to add it to the platform. Member of the Unity Coalition, which you're a part of as well.
Yes.
All that good stuff. So yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Nice. And speaking of that, we're going to touch on that a little bit. That's not going to be the focus of our show today. Well, I mean, we don't really know what the focus is, but you and Rex has been on the show. He's a great guy, very intelligent. You ran a campaign against each other that the entire political field, I don't care what party they're in, should try to recreate in every situation, even when they're opposing parties. I think if they could recreate that, that would do wonders for America. Don't say unity, be unity. What do you think? What do you think about that?
100%. That was kind of our goal with it. You know, when we first started the race, of course, you know, anytime that there's two different sides, even if Rex and I are like 75% the same in most of our viewpoints, you know, but there was still, you know, there's opposing faction, there's Team Kevin, Team Rex, there's all this stuff. And so Rex and I just came to one another and we're like, hey, like, you know, this unity thing is taken off. It's kind of been a big thing. Like, let's do this. Like, let's do a unity race and let's show the political sphere what it's like, what it would look like, you know? Right. And so we caught some flack for it from different people at first, you know, being like, oh, you need to attack him on this, or, you know, Kevin's not good at this. You need to. And so we just continued on, kept trucking on. We did the debate, if that's what you want to call it, on Fight for Liberty. And then we did our in-person debate. And the whole time, you know, we just maintained our friendship, maintained being cordial with one another. We never attacked the other one. We promoted the other one as much as we could, you know, because the goal of these elections should not be, nobody should ever vote against the other candidate. They should vote for a candidate. You know, we always hear all the time when it comes to third parties, well, I don't want to waste my vote. Wasting your vote is voting for somebody that you don't believe in, just to keep somebody else out. So when we started this, you know, that was our goal, and we were able to achieve it. I think we did a pretty good job of it all the way through. Rex and I still talk every day, just like we did during the campaign. We actually became better friends throughout the campaign, even though we did have opposing sides.
That's not a term used by most politicians.
It's not, no, but definitely. I mean, it definitely happened. I know Rex would back me up on that. We took our friendship to another level. I mean, we were friends before, but we're much closer now. I mean,
let's put it this way. When I had Rex on the show a few weeks back, your campaign didn't even come up. It wasn't something, he didn't try to use it as an opportunity to even, you know, it's just, we were just talking about liberty, unity. I mean, it got brought up, I mean, obviously, but it wasn't in a like, oh, let's score a point, anything like that. Yeah. It was just, you know, he's a great guy, friend of mine, that kind of thing. So
yeah. And I think that if more races were ran like that, you would get, because what normally happens with these races is that you get so caught up in like the controversy of the other person and like attacking this person and et cetera, that the actual information doesn't get through. Like most people that voted for Trump, say first election, they didn't vote for Trump. They voted against Hillary. And then when it came out, you saw all these supporters of his that were like, oh, well, we didn't think that he was going to ban bump stocks or whatever, you know? And then it's like, well, if you would have listened to him but they weren't. They were listening to everything against the other one. And I think that happens. And I think it's worse in libertarian circles, you know?
I agree with you on that.
Yeah. The only thing that libertarians hate more than an overreaching government or communist is another libertarian.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. I had abandoned the Libertarian Party. I was done. I was like, this is ridiculous. I can't. The infighting is just, it's nonsense, and I don't want to be part of it. And I joined the Libertarian Party in 2004, so it's not like it was, I was a long-term person in it. Always wasting my vote, as they would put it. You know what I mean? Which we're going to touch on that. But before then, I will say this, and I don't think I've ever said this publicly, but I am going to say it. Trump was the lesser of two evils when it came to Hillary Clinton.
100%.
So, I mean, I knew, because I paid attention, I knew that whatever made him popular is what he was going to do, and that was dangerous. But Hillary Clinton is evil.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. I mean,
I give every libertarian a break that voted for Trump. 100. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. During this last election cycle, you saw Austin Peterson, he was big on we should be supporting Trump. We should be doing this and that. And a lot of people came at him really hard, but I understand that viewpoint. I understood where he was coming from. I did 100%. And I think that a lot of people didn't take the time to really understand his arguments. They were just kind of against him because of whatever,
Yeah.
And I think that happens a lot within the party, but I totally understood what he was saying. And I'm the same as you. I give him a pass for that. Now, the funny thing about it is I was actually thinking of a quote on this today for the party. I think we're going to throw something up tomorrow, but the main thing that I saw libertarians for Biden were supporting was, he is more libertarian on border policies. And now today he's finishing building the wall. It's fantastic.
Yeah. That was my favorite. I woke up to that headline.
Yeah.
At just before 6 a.m. and I saw that and I went, of course he is.
I know. I just laughed out loud. I was like, oh my gosh, man. Look at that.
I remember, over the last few months, I look at all these people that voted for Biden thinking all these things, and they got played bad.
100%. Yeah.
They also played themselves,
Yeah.
Because you can't watch CNN and go, oh, well, yeah, obviously. No. But this is a supercomputer. It has all the knowledge of men and women. Sorry.
Yeah.
Just
of all of humanity right there.
Exactly. It's all
the
right
information
there
at our fingertips.
Well, it did just find some new Dead Sea Scrolls, so it's going to take a little while.
Oh, yeah.
But we'll have a little more knowledge.
Yeah.
But that's minuscule. Anyway, so I want to go into the wasted vote. I hate that. And I've heard libertarians say it too, which drives me insane, where they'll say, well, I really like the libertarian person, but I don't want to waste my vote. Democrats say it, Republicans say it. Both parties support that messaging, and they do it for a reason. If everyone had said, hey, I don't want to waste my vote, just spent that vote, you'd have libertarians in office all over the country.
No, we'd be making
Green
huge
Party or whatever party. You could, you know what I mean? You might have a maybe not President Jill Stein, but you'd have, opportunity for them.
Yeah, 100%.
How do we check? Because what was hilarious this morning in the interview I did with Mark was he said that the biggest problem the nuclear coalition has is their messaging. They have this great technology and terrible messaging. And all I could think is, libertarians have this great, the best platform, the best ideas, and terrible messaging.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And I think that a lot of that, I've spoke about this a couple of times, but I think so. One of the things that I really believe is I think that the problem with our messaging is that we try to, if you own a company, right, and you have different salespeople, you'll have different salespeople that appeal to different demographics. You may have this one guy that's really good with older people. You may have this other person that's really good with younger people, and you kind of hit it all. With libertarians, for some reason, we want to do this one size fits all. and
doesn't work.
Which doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. Like, we should be, obviously we can market to conservative Republicans, liberty Republicans. We can say, hey, look, we literally support everything that you guys say you do, except we actually do it. But where we really miss the mark, and this is a personal opinion of mine, is we miss it with young liberals as well.
Yes.
Because most young liberals vote 100% on social issues and civil issues. And if we came at them and said, hey, look, we actually supported all of this stuff like 30 years before the Democrats did.
Like gay marriage and
trans rights, all of it. But we don't
people with pot charges out of prison that don't belong there. Yeah.
Discrimination against
minorities. The game there.
Yeah, I mean, we had a female vice presidential candidate in the 70s.
Exactly.
It's and so like we are miles ahead of these, but we don't talk about it. And so I think what happens is that people come in, young people particularly, they come in, they only care about civil issues, and we're not marketing to that. But who is? The Democrats. Well, then they get lumped in with them, and then they get bought into this. Well, everything is because of capitalism. So socialism is the only solution. So like one thing that I always say is every socialist out there is a failed libertarian attempt. Because if we would have marketed them when they were younger and more impressionable and said, hey, look, I understand where you're coming from on these civil issues. I think brown people are human too. However, let me tell you why free market solutions are the real solution, and this and this and this. But instead we don't. And then we try to come at them when they've already been inundated for years in this socialist viewpoint. And it's hard to come at somebody like that. Another thing that we do is we're not, like, libertarians are always the smartest in the room, right? Our viewpoint is always like, we thoroughly research a lot of our views and stuff like that. But one thing that we don't do is thoroughly research other people's views. So it makes it hard. It makes it hard to discuss with them. So I see all the time, people will talk about, oh, well, that person's just a communist. That person's just a socialist. There's no point in messaging to them and I'm like, well, what kind of communists are they? What kind of social? I don't know. They're just, and I'm like, well, are they like a Macno, ANCOM? Are they brown? Are they Marx?
Information.
Yeah. So one of the most controversial tweets I ever put out, I got a super, super shit ton of hate for it, was I said, you should know just as much about Marx as you do Mises.
Yes.
And people lost their minds. Yeah. So I think that if we would educate ourselves better on other people's viewpoints instead of just trying to be the smartest person in the room. And then another thing that we really need to work on as a party is we have a product that we're trying to sell before we've proven that it works. So if we as libertarians were out in communities, like if you'll look at our OKLP page, we have an event every weekend for the next 6 weeks. And most of them are like, we've got the walk a mile in her shoes to raise money for domestic abuse victims.
You're going to put them in high heels?
I'm going to be in high heels.
Okay.
Yeah, I myself will be in high heels.
But voluntarily, not like voluntarily. What they did to the U.S. Army.
Yeah, 100% voluntarily. Okay. So what we're doing is we're getting active in the community, and we're showing that volunteerism works and that people can take care of people. And once you get that, because what happens with a lot of people is they believe that the only person that's there to help them is the government, because they've been inundated with this, especially when you're talking about minority groups and things like that, because that's who's targeted by a lot of the left and a lot of the progressives mostly, because then they feel like that's the only people that care about them. But if we show that we're not just the smartest people in the room, we're also the most compassionate, then we're going to be able to sell that message more. And that's, to me, that's how we do it. We got to prove our product works before we try to sell it.
Well, and speaking on that, one of the reasons, well, first of all, I'm just a kind of a nerd. But the reason I was so Jeremy Todd was the one that told me that I should have Mark Schneider on.
Yeah.
And so one of the reasons, well, like I said, I'm mostly a nerd, so I'm like, wait, I get to talk to a nuclear scientist? That doesn't suck.
Right.
But also, I think that, first of all, I think nuclear is the future. I believe that. And I think the Libertarian Party does have no energy message at all that's cohesive, which is stupid. But that's especially when you understand that technology better, which does require conversation, then the Libertarian Party could message itself as the true Green Party.
100% we could. And it's funny that you bring up that there's no energy messaging, because Reed Coverdale and I have had conversations about this. I went on his podcast.
Cohesive. I've seen you on Reed's show.
And talk about it. But most of the time, and I hate this messaging, I really do. But most of the time when you ask people, libertarians especially, about energy, well, the market will take care of it. The market will take care of it. That may be an acceptable answer to us, but it's not for the general public. They want to know how.
The general public wants to know, okay, well, how do you make sure the market takes care of it?
Right. And
they think it requires force.
Yeah, but it really doesn't. What it does require, though, is to get the government out of the way and stop preventing these better energies from coming along. Because if everything is a level playing field, then yeah, nuclear is going to win out. It's a no-brainer, you know. Oh, yeah. But you look at like messaging from even the left. Like, nuclear wasn't included in the new Green Deal. It's the greenest energy that we've got. It's insane. Exactly. It's totally insane to me that it's not something that's brought up. But we have, this belief that like wind and solar, they're going to save us. But you can look at the utter devastation that happens to energy grids when they go completely.
Look at California. I'm just saying, and they're not even total. But look at
they're not even total. But look at
I'm gonna throw out a little of my own. Watch the episode with Mark Schneider. I'm telling you, there's so much you guys can learn about nuclear power. It'll blow your mind. Up to and including America had its own Chernobyl, and no one knows about it because your government is very honest with you.
100%.
To that point, though, one of the things that I think we were talking about messaging and stuff, and like I had said before, I was done. It was actually you and Reed and Jeremy Todd and David Feit that pulled me back a little bit. I watched an interview with Jeremy, or maybe it wasn't Jeremy. I don't remember who it was. I know David and Reed were there for sure. With Dave Smith, where they had reached out and said, hey, your messaging, though we understand it, is shit. You need to and I gotta say, Dave shifted his messaging. I mean, he's still all in on pushing the Libertarian Party forward and make it bigger, which I'm actually okay with. You know what I mean? Like you said, you and Rex agree on 75% of the issues. I think that's most libertarians. So put the other 25 in the bag, talk about that crap in private. Let's focus on what we do agree upon and message that out properly.
Right.
What is Oklahoma? I know you said you have some stuff going on. One of like the walk in their shoes and that kind of thing. Yep. Oh, this is where I was going with that. You saying that that one of the things that you can take, strangely, from nuclear power that I learned today, is that the RHC, the regulatory body that oversees nuclear energy in America, is 100% funded by the utilities. No tax dollars go to them.
Really?
Yes.
I gotta watch
the episode. I'm telling you.
I gotta watch this episode, man. You're getting me pumped about it.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, well, that proves a libertarian point.
Yeah, 100%.
You don't need the middleman, and you can still have the regulator, so you can still make the Democrat argument moot, essentially, because we have the regulator, right?
Right.
And you can make the Republican argument moot because it's a free market solution, which is what they argue about.
Right, 100%.
So this is proven for 45 years. We already have this in America, just no one knows about it. So why can't we do that with all of it? You know what I mean? Yeah. Obviously, we have a scale that libertarians can say, look to this to make people more comfortable. That's where I was going with that. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's 100% true, but I think that a lot of it has to do with getting that information out there. Like, you're bringing this up to me right now, and I've never heard of it, and I work in energy. And I didn't know that was a thing. But I think that the other thing that we have to do is we have to we need to look to these examples, like what you're talking about, and utilize them and say, look, like this is what happened. This is how the free market took over where the government couldn't, et cetera, et cetera. Right. And we need to use those examples instead of we focus a lot on the theory instead of the real world application, when we can look at things and say like, hey, look, like this is something, like the roads are so bad that Domino's is paving them. Like that's a pretty substantial thing. Like a pizza company's paving them.
That's something that you should be able to point out to people is like, look, your taxes are being wasted. Private companies fixing your road.
Yeah, 100%.
Sure, they put their emblem in it, but is that a problem? According to Larry Sharp, no.
No. I was just about to quote Larry too.
Yeah,
you beat me to it. Yeah, yeah.
I agree with that wholeheartedly, and I think that the argument over roads is a very lazy argument that people make. It's almost like they think roads didn't exist before taxes, which they did.
Yeah. So a really good example of this in Oklahoma is there's a company called Brahms. So they are like a local. They own like a bunch of dairy farms, right? Okay. And then they have restaurants too. So like it's almost like a farm to table, but there's several of them. I've
been to one.
Oh yeah. Okay. So a lot of their dairies are in Oklahoma, right? And when they would buy these huge swaths of land, there weren't roads out there. So they built their own roads. There's these Brahms roads that are built.
You have to have roads.
And the public can use them, and they're excellent. And they're not toll, they're not anything. But like these companies said, oh, look, like we've got to get this milk out. Let's build a flat spot here, maybe put some pavement on it. And then boom, we got a road.
So we can roll our 80,000-pound truck over the top of it.
Right. 100%. Yeah. And so like that idea that nobody would build the roads, like the roads have to be there. The companies have to use them. So, and here's the other thing. If you're like a super liberal Democrat, and your argument is corporations are evil and we need to make them pay, if you weren't subsidizing the roads, that's who would pay for them.
Exactly.
100%.
That's your taxes that you want out of them.
Yeah.
Because they need those roads as much as you need those roads.
Yeah. Even more, because that's how they make their money.
I always make the argument to them that I'll say, well, do you live in the suburbs? And a lot of them do. Most of them are not in inner city. They live in the burbs,
Right.
And I go, you realize that your city or your state or your county did not build the roads in your burbs, right? And they're like, what do you mean? The guy that bought the property and decided to start building houses there to sell to you built the roads.
Yeah, 100%.
Because needed infrastructure. You know what I mean?
Because
now they may eventually turn those roads over to the public, but very often they don't. If you live in an HOA, almost always those roads, you ever notice that they're pretty good? That's because they're being paid for with your private dollars to your private HOA.
Right, so, and they're more accountable.
Yeah,
because
you can fire them.
Yeah, 100%. And so like when you look at roads and stuff, a really good anecdote that I always use for my life is so I did consulting for energy companies, right? And I came off of a project for BP, multi-billion dollar global company, right?
$190 billion net worth. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So then I did a small job for the state of Oklahoma, right? Like a 5-day job. And I charge a day rate. So X amount per day.
Right.
The same day rate that I was charging BP, a global billion-dollar company, was a third of the lowest price that the state of Oklahoma could legally pay me per day.
Okay, welcome to government.
Yeah. So like think about that.
But when people learn stuff like that, they go, wait, what? Why? Now the hardcore lefties will say, well, that just meant BP was underpaying you. But these are the same people that say, well, we have to raise the minimum wage. And I'm like, you don't understand economics.
No.
Like if you did, you would go, we need to get rid of the minimum wage. Yeah.
And I love when they point to, I get into this argument all the time, when they point to like the Nordic model, right? Mm-hmm. The Nordic model, the Nordic model doesn't have a minimum wage. Nope. The Nordic model,
they do not.
Their market itself is more free than ours. It's less regulated. Yes. They have more stuff like that. They just have decided as a group that they're going to pay like a 60% tax to have all these things. So
Which
you
is
can't.
fine because they made that decision.
They made that decision. That's 100% okay. And like, if that's what they want to do, then that's what they want to do. But their market is more free than ours. They're more capitalist than we are. So to point to
My
them,
mother actually lives in Sweden.
oh, really?
Yes. So I know all about. So when Bernie Sanders and them go, oh, about whatever, she's like, that's not how it works.
No.
So I have firsthand knowledge of exactly how the Nordic system works. I'm recently working very hard, and I've got her libertarian. She's almost over the edge to anarchist, but I've got her and she lives in that environment. You know what I mean? But she's an American citizen. She just lives in Sweden.
Just lives over
there 20 years now or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, their system is, Americans do not understand that system over there. So when Bernie Sanders talks this nonsense, there was at one point, I think that, the Prime Minister of Denmark was like, we're not a socialist country. Stop saying that.
Yeah, basically. I mean, they're having to come out and say like, hey, like this is bullshit. Like what they're saying is it's not.
They have a free market, freer than America.
Freer than America. Yeah, they've just chosen that they're going to give up their taxes to support those things that they want, which is totally fine if that's what they want to do. But their market is more free. So to point to them and say like that's the shining example of socialism in the world, well, they're not. Like you're literally showcasing how well a true free market works versus the cronyism that we're dealing with right now. Because that's what we've really got. Everybody points to capitalism, but that's not it. Cronyism, that's.
Well, I would say that you could call it corporatism for sure.
100%. Yeah.
And, I will leave the audience to look up Mussolini and just listen to what he said. Compare that to what we have here. The man wasn't wrong. You know what I mean? Some people call it fascism. It's better known as corporatism. In my opinion.
100. Well, it's all just dressed up, Instead of having a missing tooth, they've got a gap. That's what it is.
Exactly. Yeah, basically. There you go. That's a decent little segue there. That we're on. Libertarians are very free market, as we've been discussing. They want a free market. We don't have a free market. That's not a thing. Doesn't exist. And when it does exist, it's illegal. Mm-hmm. You're breaking probably multiple laws, federal, state, whatever. If you actually engage in free market exercise, you're breaking multiple laws. So what are your thoughts on, I know that, and I even got in an argument with the Libertarian Party of Texas over what Clarence Thomas said about these social media companies have now become the public square. And their argument is, well, they're a private company. My argument is, no, they're not. They have massive government contracts. They get massive bailouts. They get special legislation to protect them that no other companies get. They're not private companies. This is not accurate, in my opinion.
Right. I was just having this debate with somebody like earlier today about
oops.
I think that once when you start looking at companies, right, you need to look at the amount, just how private are they, and people always say like, oh, well, like that's what happens in China, right? Like China, there are some semi-private companies, there are some government companies, there are some private companies. Same thing happens here in America. They just call it different things, right? So when you talk about these subsidies and these bailouts and all these different things, I think that you're talking about something that's totally different. It's no longer a private business. It's this kind of monster that is a megalamash of both, Yeah. Now, when it comes to these social media companies, I can see both arguments. I think what it really comes down to is if they are going to dictate what is being put on their website, right? Then at that point, they've become a publisher. They're no longer like a social media. So we need to treat them as such.
Right.
If they're not going to, then they can continue to have that, quasi, as long as they're not censoring,
right,
then they're not a publisher. But when they start censoring and they start doing those types of things, then
or editorializing, because they do that when they put those little banners on your tweet about, oh, this is false or this is disputed.
Right. Or look up COVID information here. Yeah.
Right.
That's a really good point too. I hadn't thought of that until you brought it up. But at that point, they're a publisher. They're no longer a platform for you to speak, because the whole idea was to have a platform in order to get your message out or whatever, and they're not really that way anymore. Now, I don't agree that they are utilities. I think that
Neither do I.
yeah, I think that the problem with it though is we've really got to be careful whenever we're talking about these things, because I always go with anything that you give the government, you're never going to get back. So
Right.
if we give them just any bit of control over it, then I think that we're not going to get it back, and we need to have that. So I think that we should really tiptoe, but we should be very aware of the things that they're doing, and we should call them out for it, regardless of the cost or whatever, because it's very apparent that they have tried to silence more conservative views. They've tried to silence libertarians. There was a mass deletion of libertarians off of Twitter and some different things. And
now they're going after progressives too.
Yeah, basically anybody that's breaking their viewpoint.
They want that corporate uniparty line.
Yes. Yeah. And so when they start doing things like that, I think that we need to treat it as such. I don't know that having the government regulate it, like I've seen some people talk about, is the way to do it. However, I think that what we will see, I know that Trump's just recently got thrown out, but I think that we will see a bunch more lawsuits coming against these social media companies as they continue to censor and stuff like that. And obviously Trump's got thrown out because he's Trump, Yeah. But once you have like a couple hundred of these or whatever, I think that we'll start seeing more of like, hey, we really need to look at this, because they do have these special exemptions and they do get massive government subsidies, but they're behaving like a publisher when they're supposed to be a platform. So they can't be this, in between type thing. You need to be one or the other. And I think that as the public pressure continues to mount on them, we'll see a solution. And this is the most unlibertarian thing I've ever said on any podcast ever. I just don't know the solution.
I can't, obviously, I don't know the solution. I will say this. I don't want to empower the government against them. I don't think breaking them up does anything. People always bring up, they broke up Standard Oil. I'm like, no, they didn't. They broke it up into 18 companies. It was all owned by the same exact people.
Yeah. Or
you broke up nothing.
No, you did. I always love when people point to like Enron, right?
Or AT&T.
Or AT&T, right? And it's like, well, Enron's still around. And they're like, no, they're not. I'm like, yeah, they are.
Yes,
they're called EOG. Like they're Enron Oil and Gas. Like they exist everywhere. Yeah. But people just don't know it. Like they don't. One of the things that we really, really got to work on as a society, not just as libertarians or Republicans or Democrats, just as a society, is following everything to its conclusion. Right. We see highlights and we see what people want us to see, and then it's gone. It's like that was 60 Minutes just is catching some flack for editing that video, and if the original
with Governor DeSantis.
Yeah, DeSantis. I couldn't think of his name. Yeah. But if he hadn't come out with the original, nobody would know.
No.
Nobody would know. And it makes me wonder how often that happens. 100%. Well, they want to be spoon-fed and they want to feel comfortable. This isn't new. So a lot of people think this started with Trump. This media kind of half-truths or lot. So you had actually mentioned 3 Mile Island. Mm-hmm.
Wait till you find out what the media did with that nonsense.
Really? Is it in your podcast?
It is.
We got to watch it.
No, that one's not in that. It'll be in the next one.
Oh, okay.
I'll tell you off air.
Okay. Yeah, sounds great.
I'm not going to ruin it for anyone. But anyway, so when I was saying I'm not a fan of like breaking these outfits up. I don't think that's not first of all, that's not a free market solution. That's government force solution. I'm not a fan. So breaking them up is a terrible idea to me. what I would say is, if the government was going to do anything in this regard, reforming Section 230 could protect free speech and kind of put those companies in a position where it's like, stop bending to the will of these woke outrage mobs, because they'll be like, well, we can't put our entire business at jeopardy.
Right.
Now, if the government doesn't have the willpower, and I don't think that they do, then I would support repealing Section 230, but only when the company violates it first. Right. So if so contracts go both directions, right? I had a situation with one of my grandfathers before he passed away, where he was kind of, he was losing it. He was going Joe Biden on us,
Yeah.
And he was angry. He went and he took out a restraining order against me. And then he violated it by intentionally coming to me, to my space. Then he called the police, and the police told him, this thing goes both directions. If you violate it, you're actually the one that violated it. Right. That's what I would like to see happen. Let them have their Section 230 protection. That's fine, because I do want more speech, not less. And I think that protection puts them in a position to allow people to have conversations that are uncomfortable for other people.
Right.
And so just taking that protection away, I don't think is helpful. I honestly don't believe that. But holding them to the standard, holding them to the contract, I do see that as a libertarian argument you could make. You could say, well, there's a contract between this company and the consumer, right? Right. And they have this special protection because of that contract. They're in violation, and the consumer can take legal action, contractual action against them. That's what I would like to see happen.
Yeah, I think that's a great argument to make, because, we always support contracts between private entities, whether it be an individual and a company or whatever. I think that's a really good spin to have on it. I'm just not, I'm not educated enough about 230 to really have a opinion one way or another. But I think that your solution is probably the best that I've heard. It's definitely better than these things are utilities, so they should be regulated as such. I think that's
that's a terrible idea. And
yeah.
Not to mention, utilities are so regulated.
Yes.
People do not understand how regulated these things are. It's insane.
No. And most people won't unless they're, involved in it directly. And then once you get involved in it, you're like, man, but it's that way with everything, man. Anything that you do, once you start getting involved and you see how much the government is screwing it up, then you're like, oh, I know some people that are in the medical cannabis business here in Oklahoma, which is a huge deal here in Oklahoma,
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of stuff that I didn't know about that the government has screwed up on their end. I thought that it was all good. I'm like, oh, you guys, and they're like, it's never good. It's never good. But then you hear about it and you're like, oh my goodness, I had no idea about this. And utilities are the same way. Building contracts are the same way. If you ever have a contractor trying to build you a house or something, and you look at the regulations that they have to go through, it's insane. And a lot of that stuff, there's no real world application for why it is that way, other than somebody somewhere wanted a kickback or wanted to impede something, and now it's just
I promise you, there are people at OSHA and MSHA that sit in a room and just think up ridiculous nonsense to make a rule out of.
Oh yeah, 100%.
You work in energy, I've worked in energy most of my life, and I'm telling you, that's what there's a whole group of people. That's their whole job.
Yeah,
just 100%. Come up with nonsense to find you for.
Yeah. So it's funny that you bring that up. So I'm actually part of a group in Oklahoma that our whole job is because that's what I do. I'm a health, safety, and environmental consultant.
Okay.
So that's what I deal with: OSHA, MSHA, Cal OSHA, all day.
I've got a sister-in-law that's her job.
Really? Yeah. Yeah. It's the worst, but. So what we actually do is there's a bunch of us, and we come in for small businesses and help them get into regulation with OSHA and with state DEQ and things like that, because a lot of the stuff you don't know, and it doesn't make sense.
And there's no way to know.
No, there's no way to know. So like you would have to hire some consultant like me, and they're expensive. And then so like we do it for free for these small businesses to help them out, and that's a free market solution to a government created problem.
Right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, like there are regulations in there about the temperature of the drinking water that you have to provide to people.
I know. I'm telling you, like I had a situation. I worked in flowback. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And we had a situation where we had a OSHA inspection one day, and I don't know how I don't know how we didn't get fined. But the inspectors showed up on location. It was my location. I was in charge of it as the operator, and he didn't have proper safety gear. So I threw his stupid ass off location.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love it.
I mean, it was a fight where he was like, "You can't," and I was like, "Yes, I can. It's your own stupid rules.
Yeah.
So kick rocks, homie. Like, do not make me call the sheriff's department."
But isn't that the perfect? Like that's the perfect representation of the government,
Yeah, they just we make the rules. We don't have to follow the rules.
Yeah,
like
100%.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
That's going to lead us into our next topic here. That was something I wanted to get your feedback on. So, police are. I don't even know how to bridge this one. They are Praetorian Guard for the state. Now, one of the greatest things, and I've seen some high stake libertarians start talking about this, and some anarchists, Michael Malice, for instance, Dave Smith have brought it up. One of the best things that came out of COVID was a whole bunch of people on the right started to see something they'd never seen before.
Right, police enforcing.
Police enforcing. They don't care about your rights, bro.
No, they don't. They don't. And there was that Supreme Court decision that said that they're not there to protect your rights.
That's happened like 5 times.
Has it?
Yeah, they don't. Yeah. They don't have to. A cop can watch you get murdered, and he does not have to intervene. That's what the Supreme Court said, basically.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
that's not their job. Their job is law enforcement at their discretion.
Yeah.
Which is funny because then they're like, "Oh, you had some marijuana, off to the clink." But you want to beat up that old Asian lady on the street? Whatever. So I feel like we're starting to lose that traction as things are opening back up and people feel like they're not fully being treaded on. Is there what would you say as a chairman of messaging to libertarians to say, no. They're still the same people they were 2 months ago when they told you if you leave your house, you go to jail?
I think that that's something that we need to focus on a lot. And I think that I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. I know that we're losing it with the COVID lockdowns, but I think that what we'll gain it back with is when, because we know, like, I mean, it's been brought up several times already by them. This isn't some conspiracy theory anymore. They're coming for Second Amendment. And who do you think is going to enforce that? And once the Republicans start seeing that, like I always see like the "Don't tread on me," is usually right beside a thin blue line sticker, and it's like pick one, man, pick one. Like
the
you can't
irony of that is just inescapable.
But it's lost on them because who's going to enforce these rules? Like it's and what I think that we need to do is we need to make that very apparent. Like, hey, like these are not your friends. Like these are not people that they're not here to protect you. They're not here to protect you.
They're not.
Like you can look at there's some laws that we're fighting here in Oklahoma right now where they're trying to make it illegal to film police at any time.
Oh, you cannot let that happen.
No, we're fighting it pretty hard, and they're doing it. They've done it really sneakily, though, right? Mm-hmm. So what they've done,
of course, they have,
is they've labeled it as an anti-doxing, right? So they're saying, well, you can record
you're a public servant.
Yeah, you can record them as long as you don't name them or show any like their badge number or anything like that. And it's like, no. So
there's a Supreme Court case. Oh my God, I cannot remember it. The Supreme Court has ruled on this and said that they have no expectation of privacy while in uniform on taxpayer dollars. You get someone looking into that, find that, use that against Oklahoma.
Yeah. But I think so what we did is we just turned around their favorite saying on them. If you don't have anything to hide, what are you worried about?
That's good messaging.
Yeah. So we just turned it around on them and put it out there, and some people got into it, but one of the things that we're dealing with in Oklahoma is it's still a very red conservative state. And so while we do have a lot of really good,
it's still freer than Texas, just
100%. Yeah, 100%. It's not even close. We've got constitutional carry, we've got weed, we've got all kinds of stuff. So, and we have some really good. We really do. Like Nathan Dahm, he is a He's a Liberty Republican. I've been trying to get him to be a libertarian for years. He's the guy that came up with, the constitutional carry. He's the guy that came up with our bill that we're gonna sue the federal government for any type of gun regulation that they try to introduce, and things like that. So we have a lot of
we're gonna that's gonna be our final subject. So let's don't go too far into that. But
so we do have a lot of things that are working in our favor, but one of the things that we don't have is the culture.
Right.
So we still have a lot of that old school Republican culture, where they believe that the police are our best friends, and we need to support them and all of that. Even though if you look at Oklahoma City has one of the highest rates of police brutality in the nation. And so of course they're coming out.
I think it's fourth.
Yeah.
The major city in my state, I think, is second. And that's Albuquerque.
Really?
Yeah. They are horrible there.
Really?
People think Chicago, New York. Nope. It's Albuquerque, I believe. Oklahoma has what? It's weird. It would shock you where they are.
Yeah, and what we're going to continue to do is just hammer on that. We're going to highlight it, and what we don't want is this messaging to be out there that we're coming for all cops or ACAB or anything like that.
Right.
We're just here to point out the hypocrisy of a lot of it, and that I was just doing my job and how dangerous that can be.
So are the Nazis.
Yeah, 100%.
And here's the difference. And I know this pisses people off, and I don't care. So if you don't like it, unsubscribe, tune out. The Nazis, if they refused an order, would be executed for doing so. The cops can quit.
Yeah. So they do.
Nothing bad happens. Just saying.
Yeah, and if you're going to quit a job, it might as well be that one, right? Because you're not making very much money. It's kind of a crap job,
Basically,
hours.
all you do is brutalize people. It's kind of terrible.
Yeah, it's kind of terrible.
For bullies.
Yeah, 100%. And but I do think that we need to. I think that what we need to do is we as libertarians, we need to come up with a real world solution for that. And I think that this idea of we'll just privatize everything. What you get hit back with is well, look at private prisons. Look at this. Look at that. We need to have
most libertarians don't like private prisons. And
no,
that's
most
one of the things they go, oh, we can't have private prisons. And I'm like,
you can't. It's got to be to its most logical conclusion. Everything has to be. And so
exactly.
I think that we can't that argument. It's the same as oh, well, the market will provide. No, you cannot say these slogans and that's one thing that we do. Taxation is theft. No such thing as a free lunch.
Which is true.
It's true. It's 100% true. But what we need to do is we need to showcase, okay, if we privatize it, what would that look like?
Right.
What is the solution? Instead of just saying, oh, we'll privatize it. I've never seen an actual plan written out of what that would look like.
No,
ever.
And that's sad because there are actual legit places that have privatized a lot of their city services, have private businesses, and services increased for the citizenry, although the cost decreased. So there is places that we can point to and say, so that's what we have to shift the message and go, look, this works. We can prove it. It's been proven here. It's been proven there. You know what I mean? So you can't just say that. Like you said, you can't just say, oh, let's just privatize it. It's people go, okay, that's a dumb idea because you're not giving them anything to go on.
No, you're just saying oh, I have this solution. It'll work.
Right.
But we have to be more well thought out than that in all of our arguments. Taxation is theft 100%, but what we need to say is not only is taxation theft, this is why it's theft. And this is how we can do these things without taxation. Because when we just say taxation is theft, period, and walk away, like it's just a slogan, you know? Burger King's been claiming that they've got the world's best hamburger for 40 years. It doesn't mean that they do.
They don't.
Yeah. And so, like, that's all it is, man. It's just a slogan, empty slogan.
Speaking of privatizing police, and this wouldn't privatize them, but one of the things that I've heard, and I've heard it most of my life really, is that teachers are underpaid. That's also, I will argue with anyone that's not true, especially since they won't go to work right now. You know what I mean? Because the unions are too powerful. But with the privatization of police, I believe that first of all, there's a lot of reforms that we can get rid of that will drastically put cops under more pressure to do better. Yeah. Just by itself, just taking certain protections away that they have would put them, I think, on their heels a little, where they're like, I better be more careful, maybe less violent, take my time, think things through, de-escalate situations. I actually do agree with Joe Rogan on this, that more funding for police, but for training specifically, could be of value to the community. And then one more thing, a bonus operation for a good score from the community. Basically, put a cop on Yelp. Yeah. So where Oklahoma says, no, you can't show them, I want them all to have a Yelp review as an officer, and they get scored for their service to the community, and you tie a bonus to that. You know what I mean?
Like you would a teacher or a doctor or anybody. Because we already have these reviews in place for other public servants. It's kind of insane that we don't. Yeah. But I do
financial incentive to do the best possible job for your community.
Right. I think. And that would definitely change the landscape. I know what Joe Rogan thing you're talking about, and I actually kind of agree with him on that. If there was more training, if there was
I don't care about that. I just hate agreeing with such a left-wing guy.
I know. Yeah. And people think of him as being so conservative too. It's crazy.
He's not. He's way left-wing.
Man, I hear people say all the time that he's just this alt-right monster, and I'm like, no, he's like, he even talks about
it. He's all right. I'm a lefty.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane. But I do believe, I just had this conversation with somebody about police, and I think that if we were to better train them in de-escalation situations, not only that, but this sounds super counterintuitive, so just roll with me for a second. Okay. I think if we required them to have a basic level of boxing and jujitsu, it would drastically reduce. Agree with that. 100%. It would drastically reduce shootings and things like that, because what happens is they don't get adequate training, and then they get put in a bad situation, and they don't know how to do anything but the only thing they were trained to do, which is shoot that gun. If they were more,
but they're not trained for that.
No. But
I mean, they're trained to point it and pull the trigger. They're just not trained to actually hit what they're pointing at.
Right. Yeah. Not unless it's a FedEx truck on a highway.
Yeah, it can hit that.
But I think that would drastically change a lot of situations if they were just more comfortable with being in them, if they had better training for de-escalation, things like that. So I totally agree with you. Those are the solutions. It's not this, let's just privatize everything. If we privatize everything, it'll be perfect tomorrow. It doesn't.
There's a lot of stuff we can privatize. I believe that. I don't think cops is one that we should privatize. I think if a community decided if my town came together and said, you know what? This isn't working for us. We're going to hire triple canopy.
Right.
Fine. No problem. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Let's give it a try.
Right.
I don't think I agree with you. This privatize everything. Yeah, it sounds great. It won't work.
I don't think it will either. And I got into a debate with some people in the OKLP about this last year. Say we did privatize everything, right? Mm-hmm. And every city had their own private police department. What you're going to run into is, like, say, Kevin's security runs Atoka, Oklahoma, right? Mm-hmm. And I have a person that runs from Atoka to Albuquerque. And in Albuquerque, there's Dave's security, and that's who runs that. There's no guarantee that there's going to be a contract between both of us to exchange that. And there's no incentive to do that. because the incentive would be just like every other corporation to grow as big as possible. How do you do that? You make it uncomfortable for people to not use you.
Yep.
And so like if you're refusing, like, hey, we're actually not going to go get this criminal because they're not ours. We'd have to contract with this other company. It gets super, super like messed up really quick because these companies, their whole goal is going to be to grow. And they're not going to grow by working cooperatively with other companies. It's all, it's competition.
No, because they're competitors.
Right.
They want to basically prove to the other city, your company's not good at their job. They can't collect these criminals.
Right.
You should hire us.
Yeah.
They want to grow.
And it gets messy. It gets
you wind up with federal police is what you wind up with.
Yes, 100%. And that's terrible.
You got to be careful of that because I think I don't like city police. Not that I don't like my city police. I don't actually know any of them. But I like the idea of sheriffs better because that sheriff is accountable directly to the people.
Yeah, because
they're an elected official. Mm-hmm. And so if he messes up really bad, then he gets removed and someone takes his spot. You can't really do that with the chief of police or state troopers because they're all appointed.
Yeah.
So they say, oh, well, you basically did because you elected the people that appointed them. And I'm like, no, that's a funny little play on words you just did there, but that's not really true.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with you. I don't think we can privatize everything. I think we should at least have some study of what can we privatize.
Right. And I think that we could privatize most things, even down to fire departments. If you look at most rural areas, they have volunteer fire departments. They work fine. Everything's
they're basically privatized anyway.
Yeah, they're basically privatized anyway, and that works. And I also think another thing out there where you could make it even more libertarian is you could fund these non-private police and stuff. You could fund most everything that the government does or the government should be doing by having some type of state level or even municipal or county level, if it's big enough, lottery. Because then the funds are voluntarily given. You're not taking it from anybody. They choose to be a part of it. And then that fund goes to support these things that you need. And I think that that's a real libertarian solution for a lot of these things that nobody ever really brings up. But if
you're saying have multiple like the fire department lottery, the policing lottery, that's a great idea. I like that idea.
Because then like you're not only voluntarily giving it, you're voluntarily choosing which one to support.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so it gives all the power back to the person instead of it being taken from their check. And then, they vote for people that make these decisions. So they're kind of involved, but are they really?
Not really. I mean, especially when you add in all the regulators and all the appointed people, it's like, you're not really voting for anything. You don't really have a say. Kevin, we are just about an hour and you and I have to talk offline for a few minutes. And everyone's going to have to wait for the next episode to find out what that was about. So I really appreciate it. What do you got going on? Where can people go and support you and support LP Oklahoma?
So we're on Twitter, Oklahoma LP. You can find my Twitter at Hobbie Real. We're on Facebook, Oklahoma LP. Also, all of the regional and county affiliates are on there. You can find that through the main page and get through there. We have a unity camp out this weekend where different people from different caucuses are coming together to host a camp out. Then we have Southeast Convention. Next weekend, we're doing the Walk a Mile in Her Shoes. You'll see a lot of the libertarian men in OKLP wearing heels to raise money for...
You don't want to miss that.
Don't want to miss that. Not at all. I'm wearing jorts. Yes. And so you don't want to miss that. After that, we are doing a neighborhood cleanup. So we have a bunch of things going on. If you guys want to support us, you can go on to our website. If you're in Oklahoma, you can reach out to me personally. You can reach out to any of the members. Everything's listed on the website. Also, if you want to support national, lp.org, all that good stuff. Have the podcast, Chief Chats. Go support Rex Lawhorn. Go support Liberty Mountain Farms. If you haven't interviewed him about Liberty Mountain Farms, that's a really cool thing that he's doing.
I haven't. We didn't go into the farms yet. That's next time.
That's next time. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. He's living libertarian principles. So you really need to check that out. Check out Jeremy Todd. Check out Reed. Check out David Fight. Everybody else in the Unity Coalition.
Hit them all up. They're all great.
Yeah,
Hit Stacy for Truth. Hit Britt. Hit them all. Hit them all.
Yeah,
they're great.
All
so,
of them.
Kevin, this was awesome. Next time you guys have any questions or anything, send them to me beforehand or show up, whatever you guys want to do. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.